There are so many things to say about what's happening down on Wall Street. So many different kinds of people down there for different reasons, but with a foundation that seems to be more and more firm. Still, media coverage of the protesters often makes them out to be dirty hippies with no focus, or even worse. This is from just a couple hours ago. Take a look.
These Wall Street protesters are all but rock stars. A lot of you Tea Party guys were all but just rocks in your head stars.
Well, I mean, that's true, Neil, and it just indicates the continuing bias of the mainstream or the left-wing media primarily. And look, when we had 850 Tea Parties around the country, they didn't cover us. And when they did begin to cover us, we were radicals, AstroTurf, terrorists, racist. You know, these folks actually break the law and they become rock stars.
So these folks break the law. Curious to hear how some of the protesters feel about this. So let's go to someone that's occupied Wall Street herself and was front and center over the weekend on the Brooklyn Bridge, protester Katie Falkenberg. Hey there, Katie. I guess I want to get your reaction first. Fox News had a guest on just a few hours ago calling you and all the other people down there, you know, he said they brought tents where you're not supposed to camp. They're not law-abiding citizens. What do you think about that?
I think it's kind of a joke. I mean, these people are giving up their livelihoods to exercise their rights. And, you know, the whole thing about the square being privately owned public space, it's such a mess that, you know, you can't even begin to tell anyone to get off the property. People are exercising their rights, I think, is the most important thing going on right now.
Give me your story, Katie. We always like to hear, you know, everyone is a little different. From what I understand, you have a job and you've been coming down, you know, after work, on the weekends. What's your story and what are you seeing down there?
Well, yeah, you're right. I have a job right now. I'm a freelance web designer, and so every day after work I go down and I hang out with people in the plaza, and I've been working with some people down there, and then, you know, attending the General Assemblies and getting involved that way, and then going home, going to bed, going to work, and doing it all over again. And I've been to some of the marches. I've been arrested twice now. And I was on the bridge this weekend, and it's funny, people say, oh, what was worse was, you know, getting pepper sprayed and arrested unlawfully the other weekend worse than standing out in the rain and getting shuttled out to East New York to a disgusting jail cell. What was worse, you know? And it's like, well, they're both great, you know, because it just shows that we have so much power.
We talked to another guest a couple hours ago who was also arrested at the Brooklyn Bridge and said, you know, there wasn't a feeling of despair after the arrest. There was a feeling of cohesion, more strength, more coming together. Is this what you witnessed also?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, it took a long time to arrest all 700 of us, or however many there were. So we wound up standing in the rain under a net of umbrellas and singing together and using the people's mic, you know, the call and response tactic to talk to each other. And once we got to our cells, people were singing together and laughing, and when we got out, we were greeted by people who were clapping and cheering and hugging us and giving us advice on legal information. And I've heard that from all of my friends that were arrested that went to different precincts that day. So it's actually pretty exciting. You know, it's not that bad to get arrested, I guess.
I know that one of the
major criticisms
from the protesters down at Wall Street and at some of these protests across the country is the relationship between, you know, Wall Street, the corporations, and also politicians. You know, Washington and Wall Street, the relationship is a little too close-knit. I want to play something for you that shows a politician. This is Senator Bernie Sanders, who is actually very much in support of what you and others have been doing, and get your reaction.
Did Wall Street's greed and recklessness cause this recession that led to so many people losing their jobs?
It had excessive risk-taking on Wall Street, had a lot to do with it, and so did some failures on the part of regulators.
So this is Senator Bernie Sanders questioning Chairman of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke. They go into a little more, and You know, he asks Ben Bernanke, have these issues been fixed? Bernanke says for the most part, yes, and Sanders says, you know, sorry, I respectfully disagree. What is your beef, you know, that you have with what's gone on over the past few years with Wall Street?
Well, I think, you know, obviously the lack of legislation and over you know, the banks involved in private lending and involved in public lending, whatever, you know, there's been a lot of lack of regulation. And also in conjunction with that, there is the corporate personhood that we've been fighting against since the beginning of time, it seems like, in this country.
Well, especially
you know,
more so
year,
since the Supreme Court case, the Citizens United
case. Right, last year, last year, which allows corporations to fund any political campaign to as much as they want. So it's really becoming a major problem, and it's not going to get fixed until that Supreme Court legislation gets repealed.
Katie, I heard an interesting quote yesterday. I was at the Take Back the American Dream conference, and Robert Reich was speaking, and he said, you know, I'll believe a corporation is a person when Texas and Georgia starts executing corporations. Really kind of an interesting statement. Just last question for you. A lot of big things happen for tomorrow, are scheduled to happen for tomorrow. What are you hearing in terms of how this movement will take shape and evolve in the coming days?
I'm not exactly sure how it's going to take form now that the unions are kind of joining up with what's going on, because the unions have by far and away many more people than we do. But they are a huge portion of our country. And I know tomorrow there's going to be a large march down, I think it's from City Hall to Wall Street, and it's 4:30, I think, scheduled. And I personally am going to be taking off work early to be a part of it. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but they're a huge part of our country, and so they have to be included in the equation. We'll see what happens.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight and kind of giving us that account from the front lines. Occupy Wall Street protester Katie
thanks for having me.
Falkenberg.